and welcome to a special edition of Liberty Nation's Swamponomics videocast. I'm Ange Moran, Ellen's economics correspondent. This week, Black Lives Matter and the economics of Black America. The Black Lives Matter movement took the world by storm 2 years ago, with demonstrations taking place across North America. Like every other widespread movement, politicians and corporations quickly took advantage of the situation and feigned their support to garner a few additional votes and consumer dollars. In total, it is estimated that BLM generated $90 million in 2020, but some estimates suggest that this figure is a lot higher. But after reports of organization members acquiring multi-million-dollar homes in the United States and Canada, the entity's finances have come into question. Does the group need a better accountant? To help us understand what is happening with BLM and Black Americans in today's economy, please welcome special guest, Liberty Nation socio-political correspondent, Jeff Charles, to the program. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So before we begin, can you please announce white supremacy?
Yes, I completely and unequivocally and categorically deny all forms of white supremacy, especially the type of white supremacy that comes from the progressive left, which is what we're going to be talking about today.
And so for that joke, please visit Jeff's Twitter account, Jeff on the Right. So let's get started here. It was recently reported that a person affiliated with Black Lives Matter acquired a $6 million California mansion. Now, there seems to be a recurring theme as a few individuals associated with the movement have acquired multi-million-dollar residential properties in the US and Canada. So what's going on with this, and what was supposed to be an influential movement for good? Does the group need a better accountant, or what's happening here?
No, it doesn't need a better accountant. It needs transparency, honesty, and accountability, which is exactly what these groups tend to lack. And now, in the past, it was Patrisse Cullors who stepped down from her leadership position. She had bought like 3 or 4 different homes. Now, a lot of that could have been because of her book sales, which she claims, but it still was a bad look given that she's a trained Marxist, and Marxists don't typically engage in the capitalistic endeavors that make this country great. But in this case, this $6 million mansion was actually bought by the group, the Black Lives Matter global organization. Mm-hmm. And they did so secretly. It was covert. They weren't very upfront with this, and when it was discovered, now they're scrambling to try to make excuses for it. But this is part and parcel of how these organizations tend to operate.
Yeah, there was a lady, I think the woman you're referring to in Atlanta, she said she had to buy a home because she has an ill brother and she's take care of her older mother, and she has a husband or something along those lines. So now critics say that the movement generated hundreds of millions of dollars in donations worldwide, and that this money could have gone toward communities in desperate need. So if you can you give me some examples of how Black Lives Matter could have helped some of these inner city communities, or anything else that would have benefited Black Americans?
Yeah, well, what it was supposed to do is it was supposed to go to the local Black Lives Matter chapters that you have that actually have activists that are working on the ground. Now, we can quibble about their politics or what have you, but there are people with the local chapters who are actually working to serve their community. They're addressing police brutality, but they're also trying to address poverty, hunger, things like that. And the funds were supposed to go to them and also to the families of victims of police brutality. Now, those families have come out and said, we haven't seen a whole lot of that money. Same thing with the local chapters. There were actually 10 who banded together to write a letter criticizing the global organization for being funny with the money. In America, just in America alone, they amassed over $90 million. And very little that has been seen in the communities that they claim to serve.
So moving on from BLM and into the economy, there's been a lot of data suggesting that Black Americans are either falling behind in the post-pandemic recovery or at risk of being left behind because the Federal Reserve and the federal government have scaled back their monetary and fiscal expansions. So tell me, what are some of the numbers highlighting how Black Americans are performing in today's inflationary movement? What are some of the people in your circles, in your conservative circles, looking at right now?
Yeah, it's hitting them hard. And then things like this always hit Black and Hispanic communities the hardest. Now, unemployment is getting better. I mean, it was bad, as far as, under COVID and things like that. It's coming back. I believe in January, it went down to 6.9% from 7.1%. But when it comes to Black business, it's hurting Black business too. The inflation is causing them to have to raise prices. 60% of Black businesses report that they've had to raise their prices. And when you're in cities where a lot of people are living in poverty-like conditions, that's very hard. It's very hard to sustain a business in that climate. So inflation, things like this, they always hit Black and brown communities the hardest. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we're going to be getting out of this anytime soon. So I wish I could be more positive about it. But under this administration, it doesn't seem like that they're very interested in doing anything substantive. But, we got a Black Supreme Court justice and, crack pipes and, whatever. So I guess we just have to be satisfied with that.
I don't know. I'm not Hunter Biden. I don't know. But, so you're a host of A Fresh Perspective, a great podcast that is also seen on libertynation.com. You've spoken to a lot of people, especially over the last year. And from your constant reporting and issues important to Black Americans, how are minorities faring compared to the economies of former President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden? And what specifically do you think they're looking for from a policy perspective?
Yeah, as far as policy, if you talk to the average Black person, the priorities are actually the same as white Americans. They're concerned about the economy. They're concerned about jobs, education, anything that involves our wallets, our pocketbooks. That's what we're concerned about. Under Trump, we were doing a lot better. The unemployment rate was a lot lower. Now, when COVID hit, that disrupted everything. A lot of Black businesses went out of business. So that hurt us quite a bit. But under Biden, long term, I think it's going to be worse because, again, this president doesn't seem to be interested in doing much to say lower gas prices. Everybody's paying more at the pump. That's affecting Black people even more. And yet he still wants to remain dependent on other countries for oil. So those are just a few different small examples explaining how Black people have fared under this economy, under both presidents.
So you've written a lot over the last few years talking about how Republicans or conservatives in general have failed to reach out to many Black Americans. Do you think this has changed under President Biden? Do you think a lot of Republicans see an opportunity to tap into a specific voting demographic, considering how, as you said, these economic conditions, are widespread and they impact, not just white people, Black people, but all Americans?
I think it actually started under Trump because Trump actually reached out to the Black community and he increased his Black support. But even still, the Republican Party seemed to be a little bit hesitant to really start reaching out. I am finally starting to see this change. So I've been saying I'm cautiously optimistic because Republicans and typically they don't miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. But I am seeing some very promising signs that the GOP is starting to wake up to this and realize that they have to start reaching out to Black and Hispanic voters. And it seems like those movements are getting more support. What my concern is that they might fail to realize that this is a marathon and not a sprint. I don't want them giving up just because they don't win everything up front. It's going to be a while before the Republican Party earns back trust with minority communities. But I think it can happen, especially since so many are very much disenchanted with the Democratic Party, and some have even started to move away from it.
All right, I'd like to thank Mr. Jeff Charles for appearing on Swamponomics TV. Despite many of the movement's non-Marxist positive messages, Black Lives Matter might have turned into one giant grift with everyone trying to get their hands on its war chest. But in this economic environment where buck buys nickel's worth, BLM might put its resources into excellent use in inner city communities and many other issues affecting Black America. But as the kids say, grifters gonna grift. That's for me this week. Please read my full Swamponomics column each week on libertynation.com and watch my other interviews like this one on Liberty Nation's YouTube channel. Thank you.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for libertynation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
Maybe tracking polls sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.